Humanitarian economics is an emerging field of study and practice. It is a field of study that deals with the economic dynamics and also the political economy of humanitarian crisis. When I say humanitarian crisis, this covers armed conflicts, disasters, and terrorism. And the specificity of humanitarian economics is to look at those issues from a humanitarian perspective, meaning looking and examining, for instance, what explains the evolving fate of the civilian population, which is caught in a crisis, what explains the behavior of those who are responsible in the first place for the crisis, and what explains also the fact that humanitarians have or don't have access, that humanitarians are able to provide effective assistance or are not able to do so. Asking vice versa is an excellent question, because actually when I started writing the book, my main question I tried to address is what can economics bring to humanitarians? But the more I was working on that, the more I realized that indeed studying humanitarian crisis raises also challenges and very interesting questions for economists as well. So let's take first the contribution of economics to a better or an improvement of overall humanitarian responses. If you think that we have more and more a shift from assistance in kind, food aid, etc., to cash assistance via ATM cards, as is the case today in Lebanon or in other countries where you have Syrian refugees, of course, understanding the socio-economic context on the ground, understanding how supply and demand works is highly interesting. Second, having a better understanding of the humanitarian market itself. Demand, supply is highly interesting for policymakers, but also for us scholars trying to better understand the dynamics on the humanitarian market. Third, understanding the behavior of actors of violence through a rational choice framework by looking at the rationality, the said rationality that sometimes actually help understand atrocities, extreme level of violence, is very useful in terms of improving the capacity of humanitarians to negotiate with those perpetrators of violence, to get access to the field, and to try to improve the lot of the people who suffer in humanitarian crisis. So it is highly relevant. If you take also the many situations of disasters, so-called natural disasters, we see more and more insurance and reinsurance products to try to cover and transfer disaster risks onto financial markets. You see more and more microinsurance schemes, which requires also a good understanding of a lot of intricacies where economists have a lot to contribute. Now, if we look at vice versa, we, our economists, are used to study human behavior under the framework of rational choice models, where we think that everyone is supposedly behaving in a rational manner. In war, in situations where terrorist acts are committed, we see that often emotions, resentment, hatred, and a lot of other primary and secondary emotions have sometimes more of a explanatory power than strict consequentialist rationality. We see also that studying humanitarians raises the question of altruism. Are humanitarians more altruist than the so-called Homo economicus? To what extent? And how can we factor emotions and altruism into our analysis? And I think that this is one of the issues where interdisciplinary research, where economists work with psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, neurologists, and others, is a very fruitful new area of research to better understand humanitarian crisis.